Hi, Patrick here. 8 questions with. It's Thursday. Wow. All right, Thursday. Been waiting for this day for quite a while, kids. Um, Women in the Horror Month. Uh, Man, you guys have been crushing it this week. All I gotta say is the chat has been crushing it this week. Thank you so much. We had some excellent guests on this week. This is actually truly one of the best weeks I put together. Hey, and we are dual streaming again. So I see the Facebook user there. Go ahead and give a stream. Go ahead and give StreamYard permission to use your name, so we can see you in the chat. It'll tell you if you want to give permission, and go ahead and do that if you like. If you like to. So today, this week we've talked to a pair of fine actresses, and Katie Grams and Susan K. Chambers. Yesterday, we rolled up with another dynamic film director, Mimi Hatari from the UK. Rolled up with special effects SFX expert Bree Hill, and now we're going to the novelist, the dark novelist, the scary novelist, the horror novelist, Jennifer P. Tuck. I've read some of her short stories, and I gotta tell you, yeah, I'm digging it. I'm so happy that I did this. I had enough, I had enough on the ball to go out there and ask her to say, "Hey, come talk to us," because it's gonna be worth it. This is gonna be a lot of fun. Jennifer's stories are amazing. They are just they're fun. They're fun. It sort of reminds me of Ramsey Campbell, a little Richard Matheson. Um, just short, hard punches, and that's how I like my horror stories. I like my horror stories with bite, with real steel behind it, and it's awesome. Um, so we're going to be talking with Jennifer here in maybe about 5 or 6 minutes, because she's here in the basement, and I don't like keeping guests in the basement, but I also want to talk her up a little bit, and because I want you guys to really get to know her a little bit beforehand. She's written 5 novels. I believe she's on the sixth. She's doing a world building. Her all her writing is going toward world building. Now you're asking me, well, what the hell is a world building? Well, that's when you write about a series. You write in a series about your characters, like a Hunger Games or the Lord of the Rings or a Star Trek or a Star Wars. When you write in that frame of all the time, right? That's what you write in. You stay in that universe, so to speak. And so Jennifer is doing that with her writing. She's creating her own world for all her characters. And she's doing it really cool because she's sort of doing it like Stephen King does his, where characters will be coming in from one book or a story and then pop up in another one when you least expect it. I mean, isn't that one of the fun things about reading Stephen King? It's like you'll be sitting there, and next thing you know, here comes Randall Flagg, and you're going like, well, what the hell is he doing in this story? Who cares, right? He's there. So you got to dig it. I love those kind of stories, crossovers and arcs and all that. I'm a big fan of that kind of writing. And when it's horror writing, even better. Her new book that she is writing about now is Paranoia, a blood heist theory. So, I mean, even the title there is screaming promises and promises of nightmare fuel. Uh, Hi Beth, how are you? No, no, not at all. Generally, I always bring somebody up right away, but I mean, I'm so early, so I want to get a chance for people to get here and hang out with us a little bit while we talk her up a little bit, and then we'll get this party started. Hey Anthony, how are you? You're up 736 subs. You are climbing higher every time I seem to talk to you. And there's our good friend Echo Zero in the house. Hey Dale, I see you up there. Let's go, let's grow. That's right, that's right. I like that. I like that. If you're new to the channel, and feel free to hit the sub button. if you're new here, hit the sub button. You can also go ahead and share us out on your community tab. That would also be awesome as well. I would appreciate that. That would help the channel. It would help the interview. So thank you so much for that. All right, I'm ready. I don't know about you, but I'm ready. I know we're going to bring her up a little early, but you know what? All that means is that all that means is that I get more time to ask her more questions. So I'm going to bring up novelist Jennifer P. Tuck right here, right now. Ta-da! Hello, hello.
Hi.
You are live. We are live. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing us out, everybody. This is going to be a lot of fun. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so people are saying hello. Our friend Echo is here saying hello. Anthony, Adventures with Beth. Hi, she's saying hello to you. This is great. So I spent some while reading some of your short stories, and I just am enamored. They're really good, really tasty. And super imaginative, creative. I mean, it's a lot of fun to read your work.
I appreciate it. I really still get jitters putting my work out every time. How people respond. Does anyone get my brain? I'm like McFly. I get nervous about everything.
Oh, oh, you talking about George McFly? Yeah, McFly. That's a good one. Let's see. Ed's in the house. Hey, Ed, how are you? And there is the mighty Ice Lord walking in the room. The Ice Lord enters. Hello, Wes. And he's saying hello to you as well.
Hi, everybody.
Can you see the comments? All right.
No, I can't see any comments.
It's okay. I can cover that for us. Wow, a lot of people are showing up for you.
I see them now.
Yeah. A lot of people are showing up for you. This is amazing. Thank you guys so much for this. Mr. Dana Hoare rolling in here. Kaz is here. Hey, how are you guys all doing? Thank you all for coming and supporting the show. I appreciate that. Of course, we are interviewing novelist Jennifer P. Tuck, and let's get going. Let's go. What I liked about your writing, I mentioned this before I brought you on here, is I really like the, because I didn't, I started reading. I thought, short stories is, you think like 3 or 4 pages.
Yeah.
When I went to your stories, they're more like just half a page, but I don't believe in wasted words. I think a lot of novelists, they feel like when they write, they feel like they have to get like 3,000 words or 30,000 words or 45,000 words in a work. And it's like, I think that you've shown that you don't have to do that to be effective.
Right.
It could be 300 words. It could be 300 words. If you're that good of a storyteller where you could go ahead and knock out a story in 300 or 400 words, that's kudos to you, because, much respect, because that takes a lot of skill. I think it takes more skill to self-edit to make your stories come across more than just sit there and write just for the sake of writing or padding. Thank you so much. Yes. Hey, JJ, welcome back. Welcome back. Yeah, that's what Beth mentions here. Is as long as you get the point across, the number of words are not important, and that's what I mean. It's like a lot of writers, they lose sight of that, and they lose sight that they've already told their story, let's say in 1,000 words, but for some reason they feel like they need to put another, like, well, maybe I need to emphasize this more or do this more and do this. It's like, you don't really have to. I mean, just because your story's 3,000 words long isn't going to make it any better than it was when it was 1,000 words long. and if
That's right.
anything, it'll just hurt it.
Right.
Um, so I guess the only question I have for everybody when they've come up on the show is, where were you born and raised at? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I was reading some of the comments, but me,
Oh,
I was born and raised in the DMV. Landover, Maryland is where my parents, they gave birth to me. We moved to DC, and I spent there 20 years, then moved to Alabama.
oh, so you are a Alabama girl now then.
Yes.
All
It was
right.
a culture shock, but I am enjoying the quietness and calmness from the city.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
I've been to Alabama, and yeah, it's a really peaceful state. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of gentleness to it. Um, some tough areas too. I mean, I won't lie about that. There's some tough areas there, but I enjoyed my time there. I actually met somebody a long time ago in a different lifetime in Tuscumbia, Alabama.
Uh-huh.
Um, so when you were in Maryland, um, obviously you developed your writing really young, right? I mean, how old were you when you started putting pen to paper?
I would say it was after Maryland because I was still pretty young. I was, you can say, between toddler, infantile. My parents had moved. So it started about 5 years old. And I got deep into, like the poetry. I remember one of them bringing out even my creative side in this poem that said, well, I saw the branches paint the sky. And the problem was I couldn't remember the name, but I remember the meaning behind the words and the words itself at a very young age. And just things that I can relate to. A lot of, I'm a weird person. I like a lot of science fiction, paranormal kinds of things. I more relate to works from like the 1400s to 1960 and, films and stuff. And it's like, it just made me think about things when I started my creative side. Like, why does society, when I read the books and when my brain picks up different meanings from what they say, why is everyone still in this box? There is this thing that people don't talk about. Like, they want to say what's familiar to everyone
Mhm.
when they write and things. But I'm like, but what's beyond that box that that could bring out a greater meaning and value to, everything. you know, I try to pursue where, a lot of people say literature or writing is dead or things. I want people and works of art to pursue going beyond that box. I don't, I think that if we were able to do that, we could see greater things. And it makes us look at ourselves even in wonderful things that, we are afraid to even, we don't even know we have it, you know?
I will definitely say this. Anybody who says writing is dead is that's a scary sentence. If someone comes up there says writing is dead. I mean, I think maybe the what we use to write, like a typewriter or a pen or whatnot, that might not be as used as much as it used to be. But the keyboards have taken over that. So as long as we're sitting here and we're talking and or we're still writing, like people say, do you write? Yes, I write because I use electronically. I write a blog or I write a review. It's on a keyboard, but it is still writing. I like to think that like I know that I like blogging now. Blogging was really huge there for like everybody was doing it, much like how everybody seems to be doing a YouTube channel. But but I like to think that more and more people. I like to think people have not given up on that. I mean I like to think that they can create.
Yeah.
And get out there. And as far as what you're saying about the familiar, again, I agree with you. That's why a lot of the movies that we watch, everybody complains about how everybody complains about them, but yet that's what they want. You can sit up here and say, well, I'm tired of seeing the same old, same old. Yet when the next movie comes out, you'll be the first in line watching it. Oh,
Right.
they did that again. Oh, wow, that's so unoriginal. Here comes another movie with the same, another familiar. There they are. They're the first ones paying for it.
Right.
They're the first ones buying it. It's like, why don't you go ahead and read something else? Why don't you try a different writer? Try a different genre. But people just won't do that. They like what they like, and whether they can admit it to themselves, they're afraid. They're afraid to go out and venture out and to see something new. The older we get, you think that the older we get, I mean, because when you were young and I was young, and we, like you said, you read all these science fiction and fantasy and everything else. I don't know about you, but I read everything. Anything I could get my hands on, I would read it. I think that's, when you go look at the bestseller list and you see the same 30 or 40 names on it all the time.
Right.
I think it's just like, well, there you go. It's that old familiar thing. It's not like they're no longer adventuresome. They're no longer daring. They just want to be safe. As a writer, how do you fight that? How do you fight to get readers to recapture their adventuresome spirit and come back to something new?
With me, I would say someone told me when I was just, even before everything became on paper, because a lot of my imagination, a lot of people call it that, but for me, these are things that I've actually seen myself firsthand, and I write the stories behind them. Somebody told me, when you finish your work, if you just visualize everything just as much as you write it, if your work does not scare you, it can't be good. And I was like, what do they mean by that? And I had to think about it. Like, if you are doing a writing, and let's say you're writing for someone else, and if you didn't get your own work, or if it didn't touch you mentally, or something, you're missing something. And that person or thought or anything, it's you in many different forms. You have to patiently put your mind and heart in all that you do. And when I write these stories, I write them because not only did they once scare me when I started having the episodes of seeing them when I was younger in front of me. Like, okay, for example, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in my room. And a lot of times I just had a pen and paper. And next thing you know, I'm visualizing a whole thing. I'm thinking my house is haunted and stuff. This is a true story. But I didn't know that it was breaking me into a woman I would become in the future. And so I started writing them down. And I said, I'm going to put it away because this is too scary for me. When I had hit a certain age, I'll give it take 2 years, I decided to just go look at it. And I said, this is really awesome. I don't know why I was afraid of my own brain. And when I started writing them, the more I got happier, the more that I started, that nervousness started stopping. And I allowed other people to see me instead of me. Like I talk about that box with literature, when you can see that person in your work or their work, it makes a world of difference. And I just kept going on with being myself. And I started reading a lot of people.
I think it's awesome that you had a writer's box at that time. I mean, how old were you when you were writing it? Were you like 10 or 11 or 12?
When I started writing the stories, it was a little before 10. I would just write for just every time. Sometimes even like I would just get up in the middle of the night, just write things. Well, of course, you're not supposed to be up about like 12 or something, or, after 10 or something, I'm born in 86. You're supposed to be in bed. Just whenever they would come to me, I would write them down. And then writing one sentence or one paragraph became a book, then this, then that. And it gave me ideas of how to even translate how, because not everything that happens in your brain, someone is going to, effectively understand. I began to, just, I could reach anyone. I trained myself to, like with the things going on, I wrote it down. And then I studied literature. And of course, I took on some college with that. And I decided to, well, okay, I understand all of the techniques. Let me put it into a book.
When you were writing, when you were first writing, now, because honestly, let's be honest here, not very many 10-year-olds, much less, write at 10 years old, much less have a writer's block. I mean, we got to talk about that right there, because a writer's box, I ask people about that. I've asked established novelists, and I'll sit there and say, do you have a writer's box? And they're all adults, and they all say, oh yeah. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody, a novelist who had a writer's box at 10 years old. Did you show your parents your writing? What kind of feedback did you get from your parents? Were they readers as well?
Yeah, they read them, and they were more encouraging of, just writing in different types of ways when I'm trying to write my work. And because I used to just write them how I remember seeing things, and, like hearing the voices and the whole thing and stuff like that, of like, what were their expressions? What was the emotion? What was, happening around? I had to write that, but they said, but can you write down, a little more to that? Like, when you just write down this happened, oh, and then this person did that, you have to give a picture of everything, and you don't have to say many words. You can just do that. And I was just trying to understand them when they were trying to encourage me, because that was really the only way I knew how to do it. But they sat down and showed me.
I'm curious, what kind of books did your parents read?
My parents, they read a lot of things. Well, Seventh-day Adventist Home, most of them, like, they would be religious books, Ellen G. White. My mom, every now and then, because we like that stuff, she would go to Comic-Con. She liked Star Wars. She would bring those in, comic books. And, my dad, he would bring in things like just basic literature for me to read, like the time periods I was telling you, between like 1500 to 60s. And eventually, to help bring out my perspective, they would even bring me movies that are just like my brain. Like, I remember my mother bringing in The Seven Faces of Dr. Lau. I have over there Rob Sterling's Twilight Zone series, a whole bunch of things. And then she said, well, now that you have seen visually and effectively transcripts of things people wrote, I'm going to start giving you books. She invited Stephen King in my life. I had R.L. Stein. I had a lot of people. And I got more happier because I felt like I was alone. Like I was the only one experiencing, these things.
Yeah, that is like the elephant in the room right here. Mm-hmm. And but anybody knows me knows I'm very happy to saddle up and ride this elephant.
Right.
Not very many African Americans read science fiction. Like I mean, they read comic books, but a lot of my friends who I that were also fanboys. Like your dad is a Renaissance man and your mom's a fanboy. I mean, that's a perfect. You can't get better parents than that as far as literature goes, yeah. Right? My mother was not a fangirl. She was she was contemporary. She was a little bit historical. She liked reading little historical books, but but most of hers was contemporary. Like at that time it would be Jacqueline Suzanne or Judith Krantz or stuff like that. Robert Michener. But that's what she read. She didn't do the fanboy or the Renaissance. But for you, your parents brought you the best of both worlds.
Right.
But I don't know that many, and believe me, I ran with a lot, but I didn't know that many of my friends who are African Americans to read science fiction or to read fantasy. Do you think that was? I mean, do you think that was because there was no representation, or do you think it was just because the concept was just alien to them? They didn't really like it. I mean, did you know when your friends and your peers when they saw you holding a book, were they surprised to see that you're reading science fiction and fantasy more than contemporary books?
Yeah, I had a number of times. Yes, that's
Mm.
happened to me. It's just I explained to them it's just because I'm not really into the other books. It's like I don't understand them. It's like because I feel like they could be more than what they are. And it's like when I'm in those elements, it's like I'm at home. It's like I'm happy. Everything, I know I say happy all the time because you have to be happy and enjoy what you do. But
Oh yeah,
also in your life, you have to be happy. And when I read these things, it's like I'm in the books with the characters, like I'm at home. But if
right.
I was to pick up a normal book, I wasn't really into, believe it or not, that's hilarious. My friends get on, they're like, "You're not into romance and all that stuff." I'm like, no, I'm
Mm,
no,
mm.
I'm more into like things that will, mess with my psychology. If you got them up here, it's good. You got them, or something that makes me think, or go through strategic things, writings of Sherlock Watson and stuff. I like a lot of things that will, kind of bring out the best in me.
Was it frustrating? Was it frustrating though when you because because I'm thinking about this now, thinking about this now growing up. Was it frustrating for you as a reader not to see representation very much in books?
I was. Um, it kind of hurt my feelings because I'm like, I feel like there could be more. And maybe at the time people weren't really willing to come forward with these experiences, or like maybe they were afraid to say, well, hey, I think like you, or I got some things in my room I would love to share with you or possibly publish. But the thing about it is, what's very odd is that the things that I read, they weren't really, you rarely heard about an African American writing them. Or
No, no.
you,
I
it's
think
like
I think that's
rarely
actually
even seeing an African American character in the books. It's like really weird. I'm like, why aren't we doing this? And we write everything from we've done a lot of works, and but no one is willing to touch on this one that, yes, we think the same way, but we're afraid to. Why is that? I haven't seen it. But when I
I
got
think
older,
I
more people started coming forward. I wonder
yeah.
why they didn't do it back then.
I don't know. I mean, it's a two-edged sword. I
Yeah.
know. I think this is one of the reasons why. This is one of the reasons why ooh, I really hate The Shining, the movie. One of the reasons why I hate that movie, and I hate it with a
Yeah.
passion, was because I love the book so much because I love the character. I love the Halloran character. I thought he was a dynamic character. I thought Stephen King wrote a beautiful characterization of the man, and he came in and he helped save this boy's life. I absolutely love that because you didn't see to see that a lot when I was growing up reading books. I saw a lot of people all the time. All the characters were always white. They were never, it was so rare to get an African American representation in there. And so
Yeah.
when you got a really dynamic character like Halloran was, and you saw that, and you saw how powerful he was, and the same thing with The Shining or with The Stand, same thing with,
Yeah.
Stephen King has. I mean, I dare say he's a lot of things, but I have to say he's actually a little bit of a trailblazer for that, for representation. Because to me, it's like you're not going to get very many authors writing in genres like that unless you get to see it. unless you get to see it represented, like he did
Right.
with it. There's a lot of his movies. There's powerful African American characters in. So when you see the main character get killed in the middle of the movie, there's just something innately wrong with Kubrick's decision. It's really wrong. It's like it was not his place to do that. He did a lot of
Yes.
damage. He did a lot of damage, whether he knew it at the time or not. But he did a lot of damage for that portrayal. Instead of having the main character be the hero as he was in the book, and being an inspiration for because look at when nobody. I think in order to write or to create, you have to be able to see somebody else doing it. You have to be able to relate to it. And I don't think early science fiction, fantasy, and horror really did that at
Yeah.
all.
You're right. Just like even with he did another one that was following called Rose Red. And a lot of his films, I believe that, he really puts, everything in it, because even when I read and visualize, on the television or wherever, he broadcasts his work, I think he still is looking for someone that pulls out something deeper than what he put in front of him.
Somebody like
Yeah.
he could take to. You're right. He could take it to a certain level, but after that, can't relate. He can't write about that experience. You
Right.
can't. You can't, because it's your experience.
Yes.
Yeah. And so when you start writing horror and fantasy, and it's really cool. It's really.
Right.
I mean, I'm racking my honest to heaven. If anybody walked inside my room right now and put a gun to my head and say, name me 10 African American horror writers or science fiction writers, I couldn't do it. I'm trying to think of one right now, and I cannot do it. I can't. That's wrong. That's wrong.
I mean, but you're absolutely right, though, because I tried to think and I can't pull up a name in my head that fast.
So that makes, so you understand how much more powerful, to me anyway, how more powerful it is for me to read your words, knowing that. That's why when I was sitting there reading your short stories, I was just blown away because it's so impressive. It has nothing to do with skin color so much, but it's the fact of the matter that you were able to write, you're able to go into that world and dominate it. And her Jennifer's website is in the description box. Highly recommend you guys go over there and check it out. Highly recommend it. We got some questions here. I got one question here from our friend Kalel. He asked you, what was your inspiration to write? Did it come from within, or did it come from outside? Did you read somebody else's book and was inspired to write, or did it come from the inside?
Honestly, it came from the inside, because I had my experiences before I knew that there were people out there like me, or there were books that were, just even an inch towards where I was going with what was happening to me. And before I knew that I was going to be a writer. So it started with me just in my bedroom, like I said, just being Jennifer, having a pen and paper in the room. And whenever I had a vision and heard the conversations, like it was, I thought my house was haunted, but it was actually me. It was not. I was having these visions of different things, or I would see them, let's say, for instance, I would see a shadow, or I would see something of mine that makes a very scary face or something, or I would see an entire enactment in front of me. And of course, it'll petrify me, and I'll just write it down. And then I hit the book until I was ready to actually face myself. So it started with me. And then I started reading other people or seeing arts by other people that, honestly, I wonder why no one wanted to explain the deeper meanings of them, but I found them when I looked at them. And I just started, after I found out that it was okay to write these things. It's okay to be yourself in these books. I started and I never looked back.
Mm. How old were you when you published your first novel?
My first one, I have a 2000, I believe 2011. It was poetry.
What got you into poetry?
Well,
Now that's a little bit bigger field. I mean, there's a lot of well-known poets. Of course, Maya Angelou probably being the first and preeminent one. Beth mentioned some writers, some African American writers that write horror and fantasy and science fiction. Octavia Butler, Colson Whitehead, Leslie Banks, and Kendra Brooks come to mind. So I'm going to be definitely writing those all down, because when I go to the library once a week, I definitely going to be looking for those writers, because I want to discover that world. I'm 58 years old. I grew up a fanboy. I grew up fanboy, and I should have know some of these people, and I do not. And it sort of stresses me out. I'm telling you the truth. It stresses me out sitting here talking with you and not seeing that representation. And it frustrates me, and it breaks my heart a little bit too. But it all does also too. It inspires me, because I look at what you've done against all odds, and it makes your writing all that much more impressive to me. It makes it all that much more powerful. So poetry, now that's a hard field to write too. So how did you discover your inner poet?
believe it or not, when I had first started, when I was talking about my parents, how I would be able to describe my work was in poetry. I wasn't able to actually translate into, basic literature or anything until my parents pulled me to the side and they lovingly talked to me and they put me in programs. They did all kinds of things. And, I when I learned how to, effectively tell was, things in, just writing. Instead of just saying poetically, what's going on, I was okay to go from there. I try to reach people in different ways, not saying I turned away from the poetry. You can see some of the poetry as part of the beginnings of my books for horror, like in Psycho-Paranoia. I start with poetry on the very first page. So it's a lot that excuse me, it's just cold in my house. But the thing is that a lot of things that I write, they are based on some of those old poems. And I tell their stories in connection, just like in the omniverse of this origin that will come out in book 6. I actually have the stories written on my website. And just like when I give topics on YouTube podcasts and Anchor FM, Spotify with those stories, all of those are connected to the characters. There's storylines by them. So,
Yeah,
yep.
you are building your world building with your omniverse. In case you guys, again, you don't know what that is, it's, again, we'll have to go to Stephen King for this, or that I can think of, or maybe a little Dean Koontz. Sometimes I'm trying to think of writers who I've known that have. Well, I mean, there's been shared universes, yeah. Actually, now I'm thinking about this. It's like Kurt Kussler. Kussler was a really good at that. And Rice is really good at that. Basically, what it is they all their books have different characters that inhabit the same space. They may not be in book A, but they might be in book C. But they're all in the same shared universes. World building. That is difficult. I mean, a lot of people have a hard time just doing a standalone book, but here you're making a world with different adventures with different people. That's really hard.
Yeah.
How many main characters do you have a name for your universe, and how many main characters do you have?
Well, believe it or not, the universe is called my podcast name. The universe is Crypt of Silence. And believe it or not, I have a lot of characters because it's broken down into Ghost Asylum, which is universe one. And I'm going to explain what I mean by universe in a minute. The second one is Parallel Universe one. The third one is called Blind Spots. I'll get into that. And then the last one is Parallel Universe 2. Why I did this is because I went beyond what people would really do. When you read a book, and just, everybody just, agree or agree to disagree when I say this. Like, have y'all experienced this? When you read a book, you only see what the main character is doing at that time. You never see anything that's going on the outsides of what they're doing to make everything make sense or connections. Well, there you have it. Those stories that I have, they are the things happening in reality around the character. But in this one, what makes it different that you don't see every day is that the universes are actually people. They're not a civilization or anything. Reality is happening around this person. So I try everything to explain it when I write even about the story on my website or talk about it. I'm going to do a video about it. And for this one, this guy's name is Universe 1969. And everyone is going to try to depict, well, is he the paranoia of 1952 or something? They're going to try to call him by a name, but it's not his. He's going to eventually reveal it. And so this person, is an example of how many, if you can put 1969, you can imagine how many people would be main characters in this omniverse as the universes and time switch realities.
So 1969, he's embodied as it's not necessarily, it's not a human being as we know it, but this is science fiction, which is awesome. So 1969 is not so much a single human being. He just embodies that world, all in one character. So he's one and he's none, or everyone, I guess, of that time period. That's interesting. That's interesting. So all sorts of stories can lead off him. Everything comes back to him. Everything starts and comes back to him.
Yeah, for Ghost Asylum, it starts with him. And by the way, his name is Tobias Murdoch, and the person that he is actually his love interest, which is very important because when these like universes collide and there is going to be a survival of the fittest, all the things that we like to throw down inside, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen in the most awkward, strange way. Is Naomi Ashes, and they go by many names. They're Blind Samurai. They can go from Shadow Rider, fun names for like writers, Shadow Monster. They can be all kinds of things. If you want, hey, if you will, call them Skinwalkers, whatever. They're going to go by many names, and it's going to be at the most weirdest moment. You're going to find out exactly who they are. And that's going to take up to Parallel Universe 2 to find out even who survived and the person that's controlling everything. Matter of fact, I can tell you her name, but if I tell you everything about her, it's going to give the story away. Her name is Glass. And that's what makes this awkward, because when you think even metaphorically, that name, it kind of pulls so much together.
Now, I'm trying to imagine you have like 4 or 5 different binders, and yes. I'm taking each binder represents that particular book, that particular world. So, do you write all the characters down, like Dick Jones, and do you outline the entire character and what role they play, or at least who they're connected to? So, like when you are writing your novel, you can go back and bring those characters in as they're needed into it. But you already have, like, you write their backgrounds before you write the story. Is that what you do?
Yes, I do. I write their name, all of their talents. I write down their family members. I write everything down.
That's detail.
And when this is going to happen to them, when it's not going to, I write everything about that character outline before I even start everything.
That's amazing, Jennifer. I mean, I always wonder how they do that. Like I'm going to bring up a book here, and I'll talk about it a little bit. Just happened to be here. So I read this guy right here. I read John Sanford, right? Now, when he first started, when I first ran into him, he wrote one character. He wrote a character named Lucas Davenport. But since then, he has split off that character. He has split it off to another character. He's actually split it off to like 3 different characters now. And he has a supporting cast and everything else. I always wondered, like, how does he do that to where he or any writer, any novelist, how do they bring in supporting characters into a shared world? Because it's not just like, it's not like a red shirt in Star Trek. You punch him in there, he's going to die in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
These characters all become important. And I've always been wondering, like, how do you intermingle characters into a novel like that? How do you make it work?
Well, I take what I've written down, and a lot of times what happens to me when I'm writing, it's like the world is building. So it's like I thought I wrote something down, and then I will have different arrows pointing different places, and I'll connect these realities and universes together, and I just have fun with it. Then if that's not a way I do it, the second thing I do is to do all of that, I don't know what it's called, but it's like I would take the person and I would even put them in another character's position, and I would sit up and, put these different outlines together, and I would always have whatever happens draw back to make both sides connect. Or I would have it draw back to, okay, why is this person, or what's the value, importance of this person? And just like when I had said the stories, that's the best way to do it. That's one of my outlines. When you hear my my stories, or you read them, or you hear my topics, I'm already giving you the outline. And then I'm drawing it back to the book, and I'm the character.
Now, so your first book that you wrote to establish the world, did you take that to, how did you before you put it out, how did you fine tune it? Are you part of a writer circle? Do you have friends who are also writers that you guys meet like once a month or something like that? Do you have anybody else read your books for editing or anything like that? How do you hone and shape your stories?
Well, just like my bedroom, this is my home. Like, so all of that, like, I just write them all. When I'm ready to put them out, I do go through a publisher, editor, and different things. I'll get asked 1,000 times, well, what do you mean by this? Or would you like to change this word into a different word? So it sums up everything, but the word that you're using, is this and that. Like, most of the time, this is where I'm at when I'm doing everything, my room. But like I said, other than that, when it's ready to come out, I just put it out.
So no peer groups or anything like that. No. Do you beta test? Do you let other people read your work before you publish it to get ideas? No.
No. I've heard of that, but for me, comfortably, I don't do it. If it's someone reading my work, like, just sneak when after I'm up here laughing all night and writing everything, like my husband may sneak in and read my work. Or I'll be like, honey, I got an idea. I don't do that. I guess that just comes from, like I was saying, I felt like I was alone. So I kind of like just to myself about everything. I probably need to break away from that. But most of the time, when I'm with my husband and children, if there's a break in the day, I'm glued to my books. I'm glued to the computer. Ink pen is my best friend. I'm telling it everything to tell to its neighbor on a paper. I don't. That's very, a good question. I probably need to try that one day, but not for no,
the
new
only thing I say about beta readers is this. I think a lot of people do that, but I would even go as far as this. If you're gonna do beta readers, that's fine, but I think they all should need to be writers. They shouldn't be someone like me, because what do I know about writing, right? I don't know. I'm not a fiction writer. So to me, it's like I would I dare say it would be more like a peer reader, more than a beta reader. I would want someone who actually has written a book and published a book. I would trust them more than somebody off the street in a group saying, "I'll read it for free." I don't trust that voice. I would trust another writer to tell me the truth. I just would, because they're going to be honest with you. They're going to be frank with you. They're not going to be all gooey. Oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. They're going to be out there sitting there going like, yes, this character needs a little bit more depth, or this location should be over here. I would suggest that. I mean, at least the good ideas, but that's just me. That's how I see it. But I don't know how writers, I know that writers I know that they do now, which I didn't know before. I didn't know this. I do know that books even by the masters, they get better at. They get test read. Like, okay, this is what we liked about it. This is what we didn't like about it. About the book.
No,
and so,
not in my case. And another reason I'm so secluded that way, like I don't have many writers, like friends or in my circle growing up. I guess maybe I just stayed that way.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't need to, do that. But I mean, like if like somebody, like even my mother per se, if she came back and said, well, can I, read, or, a family member or a close friend, I would love to read your work someday. Can I read your work? I wouldn't mind, but I don't have my things, believe it or not, like pre-read or edited before I give it to my publisher. Like when I write it, that's it. I just turn it in.
You do the editing and then publish it. Yeah, that's what are some of your favorite characters that you've created? I mean, well, before I ask you that, I want to touch bases with you about your about the short stories. Your short stories are really interesting to me. I'm fascinated by it. The Terrifying Originals. Talk to us about the Terrifying Originals. Where did you come up with that concept? Because that's brilliant.
Well, I can say it in one sentence, that describes like a good majority of what's happening in the stories, being that they're connected, is that in an omniverse, there is in this omniverse of the dead's reverse grave is an unexplained, and that unexplained turns souls into the scraped dust news. So basically I said, well, if bones could tell the stories of their darkest screams, what would they be? And so that's why I started up the way I did. I started telling the reason behind the news that's happening and, what's happening to these souls. And then I put it back to the bones, the truth. So that's how I decided to go about things.
I want to read one short story. I want to read it. Then I want you to break it down a little bit for me.
Sure.
So the one I'm gonna read here is The Terrifying Originals, episode 70, the Clothes Basket and Hamper. I decided to get an early start on spring cleaning. I pulled the attic's ladder down from the ceiling in my bedroom. I walked up the stairs. I swept the floor. I looked through old boxes. I stopped. I felt that someone was staring at me. I looked behind me at a dark corner. I only saw an old clothes basket and hamper. I walked over to them. I grabbed them. I walked them down. I walked back down the stairs. I walked out of the bedroom. I entered the laundry room. Something felt odd when I placed them on the floor besides the washing machine. I grabbed my clothes out of the washing machine's mouth. I like that mouth. I put them in the dryer. After I turned it on, I left the room. I walked into the bathroom. I took a shower. I got dressed. I picked up my dirty, sweat-filled clothes. I walked into the laundry room. I approached the clothes basket and hamper. I tripped. The clothes went up into the air. They fell onto the floor. I fell onto the clothes basket and the hamper's lips. Their teeth entered my body. They ripped me in half, then ate me. They belched my bones into the wash machine. When it was finished with me, it opened its mouth. My bones flew up. As they entered the dryer, the clothes basket and the hamper watched. The dryer's mouth closed. Its eye moved. It heated them. They turned into dust. So, an ordinary morning of clothes cleaning, and all of a sudden it just turns into just mayhem. Now, how will you fit a story like that? Because to me, that story is really self-contained. So how do you involve a story like that into your universe? Like who got killed?
Believe it or not, there is a character, and this is real bad. This one character that I'm actually bringing into there has the ability of turning like anything, any reality into what it wants to be. And one day in their storyline is that time and reality got tired of it. It glitched. And so they're all of a sudden, because of what happened, they were sitting in their home and they saw the flowers on their table had faces with sharp teeth. All kinds of stuff was just not right, and it was scary. So the person had tried to leave, but the person ran into this specific character, and this character is the father of their best friends that are twins, Silent and Invasion. There's a reason why they're named that. And so he said, "You're under arrest." And he actually went through with the whole thing, but the strangest thing that happened was he was not placed in incarceration. He was thrown into his mind. Basically, in the whole court case, it was said that none of this was real because
Could you imagine that though? That's actually sort of brilliant, you know. That's actually sort of brilliant. It's sort of I like that, you know, instead of incarceration, get thrown into his own mind.
yeah.
It's almost sort of like this is really simplistic. I apologize for that, but I like that idea because it sort of reminds me of the penance stare from the comic books from Ghost Rider, when you know he forces the bad person to go in their own mind and see all the pain that they've caused other people, and they come and they feel that. Now I know yours is a little deeper than that. I like that idea though, that the fact that you get instead of getting sentenced to jail, you get sentenced to your own mind. I mean, God,
Yeah.
so imagine that. Imagine the horror that would be for a lot of people. You have to
I
live.
mean,
You have to live. Yeah.
yeah, like who is actually willing, like even today, to sit in the seat of their own mind?
Oh,
I'm
man.
serious. Like your mind can scare you more than you can scare what's in front of you.
I would I'm just doing my best to cope outside my mind. But if I was turned around and forced to live my mind, or like this character right here, forced to relive that moment in at the house, that would just be, yeah, that would be not that would not be so much fun. Um, now now, do you sign? So, what is your process like? I mean, I know we talked about, but I want to know what the physical process is like. Do you have a certain time a day, like where you assign yourself? Like I can write on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I can write on book A on Monday, book B on Wednesday, book C on Friday, or is it just whenever you're inspired and have the time? What's your process like?
I write basically every day except for Friday evenings and Saturday morning. And it's just also because I go back to even my religious take, I'm Seventh-day Adventist. But it's really funny, but like most of my writing is at night. I'm a night person, or like they say, night walk or something. Like I seem like to be up when the moon is up. So I could do that from moon up to moon down. During the day, what my brain is like, why I said I have these abilities to do this, is because when I'm in that moment of writing, I have this thing where I could pay attention to reading a book and also writing a book at the same time. My mind can split. Or like if I'm writing notes, I can write the book the same time and write my stories to go on the podcast. I've been doing that for quite some time. I don't know what it's called, but if anybody in the comment section has experienced that, even I knew it was bad when I went to school, when I was writing about this universe in class. I was able to write down everything the teacher said, the notes on the board, and write my book the same time.
You
And it
mentioned
freaked
your
the teacher
you,
out.
men-
I don't know what it's called, but I do it.
you mentioned that you're a Seventh Day Adventist. I mean, Ellen
Yes.
G. White. Ellen G. White used to she used to write some.
Yeah.
There were some scary books she used to write. I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
Ellen G.
can
White.
remember a few of hers. Even she has a religious book that talks about even the end of times. Like I saw two fingers hit, and a lot of people referred it to 9/11, and that book was published years before. She writes a lot of beautiful work, and people reference her even to the Bible. And she said, but please do not worship me and remembering the 10 commandments of my father, because I'm just a messenger. And
Right.
so I get up, and yes, I do take her words with me as much as I take the word of God. And a lot of times that's the thing. When your father says to come as you are, you should also be able to, like when I'm writing, if I'm writing my work, I would rather be honest with my father about what I'm seeing and experiencing
Oh,
on
I think you.
paper,
I
you
think
know?
so too. I think
Yeah,
so too. I don't think there's any. There shouldn't be any. There shouldn't be any clash. I mean, they shouldn't
right.
be. I think I know a lot of people say, well, a Christian can't write certain things. Why not?
They
Why,
write a
why,
lot of
why not?
things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can write anything. I mean, it's I disagree with that. I think that I think you can write whatever you wish. I think it's cool. It makes it even more fun to me because because you have such a vivid imagination and a gift of storytelling. I mean, where did you get that from? You didn't get that from a book or from a box of cereal. You got that from God Himself. So I appreciate that. Um, yeah, somehow I don't know if any of your churchgoers would read some of your short stories, but I'll be happy to read them.
You see, there you go. I would have been rebuked from the front door.
I was thinking about that. I'm thinking about some of those stories. I'm going like, ooh, boy, I can see the pastor going like, Sister Jennifer, so are you trying to say that the laundry our dish our clothes dryer is going to eat us? Well, you never know. It all depends what day you go down and
It
what.
might not, but your mind might eat you at the end of the day, and you'll never know. I mean, like, yeah, a lot of things. Well, practically anything, believe it or not, can actually consume you. I mean,
Mhm,
it's human made, just like we have mouths of our own,
mhm.
but it's just my mind sees them a different way than it reality will actually show me. So I've
It's gonna
always
be.
had that kind of, it's terrifying, but it's actually fun at the same time. You gotta learn to laugh at yourself. Like if you're sitting up paranoid all day, even writing things down, like it's okay to face that. Or you may be actually seeing yourself in front of you. Like your mind is trying to tell you something. And I really encourage people to not be afraid to explore the avenues in their creativity.
Is that have you tried to write? How I mean, I know this may be have you is it hard to try to interject humor in your work, because your stories are so, they're just, let's just be honest, they're dark as hell. Uh is it do you,
um
now I'm sitting over here going like, I'm not really sure I want to go down and do my clothes right now. I'm not really feeling going down there and doing, washing my clothes, because
okay, all right. Okay, this is only on the table with everybody who is in the conference room. When I'm writing these stories, believe it or not, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. 90% of my story, I'm dying laughing when I'm writing. And I've had that where someone even has read my books and they came up to me and they'll be like, "What? You're not right. Why are you?" Like they would pull me
Mhm.
like angrily or petrified. And I would sit up and they don't know even the scariest parts. I would just be in my room just laughing hard, but I would get up
Right.
seriously and tell the story. And that's just how I base. It's not something that, I'm proud of. It's how I deal, and some of
Well,
them that do happen in front of me, or in my mind, or if I'm hearing the conversation and writing them down, they kind of do sound funny, but I have to explain exact words of what's going on. And no, that is a true thing. You can get any book or you can get any film. You're not going to hear, you're not going to see the writer, director, the person that writes. You're not going to hear their laughs. You're not going to see the smile on their face, especially when they're trying to get the work out. But you find out in conversations like these that there's a human behind these. And
right.
sometimes, even the most petrifying things can be the most humorous, or they can be the most
I could
things
I,
that,
I
bring
agree.
people together.
We were talking about that. We were talking about that yesterday, as a matter of fact, about horror films. Is like,
Yeah.
a lot of horror films are funny. A lot of horror films are funny, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of comedy in it. Whereas you see a lot of dramas, they're not funny because they're so like real life. Like when you see a movie like Heat, or something like that. Something dark. Silence of the Lambs, or something like that. Even though it's a horror film, but I mean that movie that book is dark as hell.
I
But
remember,
there's some comedy in it though.
yeah, I
Where
remember. And I remember, like, people may think I'm evil for this, but I remember actually going to the theater and laughing during the movie Saw. And okay, hear me out. The ending part, because I got it from the beginning what was going on. That's just me. I'm very observant. And I busted out laughing from the time I noticed the humor that no one looks at the floor. I was laughing from the time the man got up. And when he got up and he snatched the saw from the man, even from the time he walked out the door and slammed it, I was laughing because it's not that the story was just in one direction. It was going in a lot of things, like about how well do we pay attention? how well do we observe? What's going on psychologically when this is happening in front of you? Do you feel like you're in the situation? Are you willing to look at the odds to solve this whole mystery? It makes you do those things. And I think when he wrote it, or she, I'm not exactly sure how it came about, but I more so enjoyed it because it was really trying to, it kept me on pins and needles, but it exercised my brain to see beyond what was going on in that room. There was a bigger power at B that was going on, and there was a message behind it.
Yeah, there was. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why I saw at least the first two movies in Spiral. I think that's the reason why they're so smart. It was so smartly done because of the writing. I mean, it was smart writing. And and that's something that, again, it's like that movie there, it's sort of sad. It's sort of sad that like, in this case, I like to think that people came back for the Saw movies for the writing. Like, why do you like Saw so much? I like the writing, but most of the time you talk to somebody from a horror, like a horror film background. Well, why do you like the Saw series? I like the traps. I like the traps. I like how they did this, and did that, and they ignored the story behind it. What was driving the story behind it? What made, without the story, there are no traps. There's just there. There's no life to it. I mean, you can't just write sensationalism. You got to write heart behind it. You got to write a backstory. You got to, like, if we were just to read your short stories for what they are, like if we didn't know that they're part of an omniverse, if we didn't know, they're still really, really good. They're excellent. Now that we know that they're part of something bigger, they're even better, because now we know that they're all connected. Now we want to see what's behind the door. We want to see what's how are you going to put these pieces together, and then bring them up and show them. I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, what's beyond the surface and the parallel door seats? That's what I always fight for people to do. It's always great, and you find out a lot more when you are willing to take those initiative steps.
So I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about how are you going to, like the story I just read? How are you now? Is that just basically I mean, it's a short story, but it's also an outline. So how are you gonna fit that story, if you can explain it? How are you gonna fit that story into your omniverse? And when is a short story okay to be a short story?
How I'm going to fit it, believe it, that's a part of Jake's story. His real name is actually Jake Murdoch. He is a family member of the Murdoch family, Tobias and his twin brother Ananias, and he has another set of twin brothers called Damien and Michael. Michael's after his father's name. And that is a little referee of like what he's been going through before time and reality glitched on him. Like, he didn't see the signs because he was so busy controlling that it was coming. Little hints like those were happening around him. It's just, with this, I want to add it where I can explain it where it ends up coming out in another family members or another time period happening, type situation, because sometimes that's how we do, even as human, find out about things. It's because something else took place. So Jake will be in the next one, and it's going to more so explain that part, and it's going to happen because of someone else.
So can people buy your books strictly through your website? We'll have that in the description box. So if somebody wants to buy your books, they can buy it through your personal website.
Yes, Psycho-Paranoia is on my website. You can purchase it there, or like people's favorite, you can go on Amazon. And so, or Barnes and Noble has it. So, I mean, any way you want to,
Um,
I have all
but,
avenues open.
but if they buy it from you directly, they can get a signed version of it. And these are hardbacks. I mean, these are hard copies too. These are not ebooks. These are right. You
Yeah,
are
this
they
is
are they
paperbacks.
Yes, I recommend paperbacks. I think that's the best way to go. So if they buy a book through you through your website, they can get a signed copy.
I can arrange that. I thought about that, because when I first started, I just put the book up there and they could buy it. But I feel like it means a lot more if they get my signature, as a
Mhm.
personal touch.
Yep.
So I would love to do that for, anyone that would like a signed copy.
Okay. So if anybody here is listening to the replay or what have you, and you want to buy one of Jennifer's books, you go through her website, Jennifer P. Tux, and then you can order the book, and then she will sign it for you. And then when you buy it, you'll get a signed copy. I know a lot of people that's what they love, that they love collecting signatures of writers. Um, I want to thank you for coming out and hanging out with us. I really have enjoyed this very much. I need to
Me
get one of
too.
your books. I need to get one of your books so I can actually, I want to read the first adventure. Um,
Sure.
yeah, I definitely will. And I want to thank you for coming out and sharing your process and your story. I think it's fascinating. I definitely want you to come back. And I want to thank the chat for coming out here and knocking it out of the park yet again. I've had so much fun tonight. This has been
Me
cool as
too.
hell. It really is. It's like it's a unique perspective, something that I have never experienced yet. Talking with someone like yourself, Jennifer, and again, it's like it frustrates me in a sense. It's like it shouldn't be a first. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
this should not be my first time writing or talking to an African American horror writer. It should not be my first time. I should know a lot more, and we need to make that happen.
Right.
We need to make that happen. We need to expand our minds a little bit more and give people the chance to create like yourselves. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. I'm really gonna thank again. I want to thank the chat for coming out and knocking it out through the park. Uh, yeah. If a close
Yes,
start,
I see someone in the comment section. That is true. SL7. Okay, I'm gonna
uh-huh.
tell us a quick secret about this book. But okay, the best way to describe what this person is saying, why didn't you come out or like come out with a video game about it? When I had first started, I wrote my work as a comic. So I translated it into literature only because of ignorance. I'm gonna tell you why. I didn't know how to bring about a comic book, but I read them. I didn't know what I had to do to like all the things that could help me bring that about, but I got it on paper. That was the important thing. So when I had started thinking about that, I thought about it would be a fun idea to have even the storyline with the main characters as a video game. I'm hoping to reach that point in the future. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Maybe that will happen. And eventually this will become a comic once I actually, find out how I can do that. But for now, I just write it as literature.
Mm. All right. So there we go. So you have 5 books published. You're working on your sixth one, right? Your sixth one right now is working on the sixth one. So
Yep.
there's 5 written that you could buy from, and then there's one that's going to be published. Will it be published this year or next year?
The next book, Psycho-Paranoia, The Sword's Exorcist, is supposed to come out this year. If not, it can be delayed to next year. But I'm really looking forward to if I can get it out this year.
All right, folks. Thank you for coming out. Tomorrow night, before I let everybody go, tomorrow night we have Vale will be here with us. Vale is a young cosplayer. She will be here. We will be talking about all things cosplay. She is a terrific talent, and I'm looking forward to talking to her. about her skill and her talent and the world of cosplay. It's a whole different animal than when I first saw it, and we'll be talking to her about that tomorrow. She is will be here at 8 o'clock, and on St. Patrick's Day, extra bonus points for everybody in the chat who wears green. I should mention this. Let me mention next week real quick before I let you guys go. So next week we are down. We have 4 shows next week. We'll be here Monday with Lola Vegas. She'll be here at 8 p.m. On the 21st, we'll be talking to actress, comedian Laura Faulkner. She'll be here at 8 p.m. On the 22nd, we had to reschedule our actress friend Audrey Neal will be here with us on the 22nd. And then on the 23rd, we have a return visit of the lovely and sassy Angel Bradford. Anybody who did not miss the first interview with Angel Bradford, you guys need to go watch that. Angel is absolute treasure, and I'm so glad she's going to come back and hang out with us next Thursday, the 23rd. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much. We will see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock with Vale. Jennifer, you stay right where you're at. Everybody else, I'm going to say good night. Thanks for coming and drive home safely. Peace.